drinking anyway?
We'll forego the formal introductions. Well, I made an espresso, and it's got almond milk, and the almond milk was sitting on the counter for a little bit. She's a little chunky, but I'm drinking
at least
it anyway.
It's not. At least it's not real milk that's been sitting on the counter for a little bit.
So Lacey had made an espresso this morning, or she made a latte, and I was like, she had some almond milk left over, and it was only like an hour or so ago.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I asked her, how long's that been sitting there? She's like, I just made one about an hour ago. So I'm like, I'm going to use it. I go pick it up, and I'm like, ew, looks more like cottage cheese. But whatever, still tastes good.
Yeah, well, I got a green tea with a little bit of honey in it.
So episode 52.
Episode 52, yeah.
We're going to talk about, we got all kinds of stuff to talk about today because there's some new things that have happened. Got a website.
Yeah.
So last week I was sitting around and I was like, I got to learn how to make a website. So I sat down, spent a couple days and did it.
And you made one.
I made one.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
So you can check that out at www.maineoutdoorenthusiast.com.
Yeah.
We'll have some hats and stuff up there eventually. Maybe some other stuff that I find that I use that I like.
Right.
Like I've got a nice leather-bound journal that I use. I got a couple of them.
Yeah.
And so I might offer some of those.
Right.
Journaling, I've talked about journaling before. I think it's important.
Yeah, I've done it for decades, for a lot of years.
There's something about writing down your thoughts. That I don't do it so much with hunting and fishing anymore because video's kind of been my journaling.
Right.
But I do it with other things.
Yeah.
I like to sit out back and kind of jot down notes about different stuff. So yeah, stuff like that. What else are we going to have on there? Maybe some prints. Maybe a newsletter.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All kinds of stuff. But it was fun making. So it's great to learn new stuff.
Exactly.
It'll be applicable someday.
I shouldn't say it's beyond my scope of abilities because you can learn to do anything.
It's really easy.
Yeah. But
I think like Lacey was looking at it. She's like, how'd you figure out how to? And I'm like, it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
My kids could do it.
I kind of just shy away from the technical stuff and the computers. And
well, we're going to, the other thing, I'm going to throw up. So I've got tons of footage of things over the past couple of years that I haven't put on, haven't put up. Maybe stuff that's cut out. So I'll throw some of that stuff up there.
Yeah.
That'll be exclusive to that. Maybe some random stuff behind the scenes that I don't really have a place for. Maybe a little more raw footage, like your moose hunt. I'd put up there. There was some video of the actual, because when you shot the moose, it dropped.
Right.
Then you go up and it was still breathing.
Yeah.
But not moving.
He'd get up.
And then it got its rear legs under its back end.
Went right across a road.
Yeah. So
luckily went into the next ditch, but even then it tried to get up in there too.
Yeah, tough animal.
Yeah, they're a tough animal.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes a little lead to bring them down.
Yeah.
So keep them down.
We'll have stuff like that on there. It'll be kind of
a
continuous work in progress.
Yeah.
Over time. So, hey, so I got kind of a funny story before we get too far into this one. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. So, and Lacey brought it up last night when we were out to dinner because she was listening to a podcast and the podcast reminded her of me. Have I ever told you my panty liner story?
Your panty liner?
My panty liner story.
I don't think so, Paul.
No.
And if you did, maybe when you start telling it, it'll...
So I've mentioned on here, right, I used to have a wicked fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrified.
Yeah.
And school had broke me of that.
Yeah.
So there was one day I would sweat in my armpits profusely.
Yeah.
And I would come up with ways to I'd have a white t-shirt on, my dress shirt, and then I would wear a wool sweater because wool handles moisture great, right?
Right.
And then my lab coat. Even with all of that, to our presentation, I could soak it. Soak it like a son of a gun. So I was in the bathroom one morning and I had a presentation that day. And I was like, man, I gotta come up with something else. I can't. It was like summertime too. It was warm. Like I can't wear a wool sweater,
right?
Lab coat. So I happened to see, and I don't know where they came from. I think Lacey had them from like a school project or something. But I'd noticed in the cabinet in the bathroom there was a box of panty liners, and it just struck me that it said
absorbent, right?
It said like thin or barely there or something, but super absorbent.
Right.
Well,
super absorbent.
My wheels get turning.
Yeah.
So I grabbed one. I opened it up. Never opened one up before. I'm like, holy son of a gun, these are adhesive. So I take my Hanes white t-shirt off, and I open one up and I stick it in the armpit of the white t-shirt. I did it to the other side. So I go and do the presentation that day. Dry as a bone as far as my shirt was concerned. And I didn't tell Lacey for a little while. And then one day I came home and I said, I got to show you something. So she comes upstairs and I go take my shirt off and I pull one out, and it literally was like a baby's diaper.
Right.
That like say went in the pool or something.
Right. Swelled up.
It was just and heavy. And Lacey's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, these things work good.
Yeah.
So she was laughing. So I would do it all the time. And every now and then I'd be like, hey, we're getting low on panty liners. Can you go pick up some?
Yeah.
So that was always and I hadn't told many people that.
Yeah.
And so since then I've gotten over the whole public speaking thing. But so she was listening to this podcast. Apparently I wasn't the only one that's done that.
Yeah.
And this girl was explaining she had used panty liners.
Yeah.
And apparently there is a product out there.
Oh,
that you
for
can
that
buy.
purpose.
But I don't know when it came out, but Lacey was like, gosh, you should have patented something.
Yeah. See,
but yeah, that's my panty liner story.
My problem is, Paul, I don't sweat, even though I get nervous or whatever.
I don't sweat. I wouldn't sweat on the forehead.
Yeah.
But man, my pits.
No, I'm not a guy that sweats very much, and for whatever reason.
So
yeah,
that might be
even though I get nervous.
Yeah.
I may get nervous about something, but I don't sweat when I get nervous. But that reminds me, we probably shouldn't tell too many stories here, but I was in high school playing basketball, and of course I have two sisters, and we have a duffel bag. Of course, you take your duffel bag, you take a towel from home and stuff to shower after the games. And I remember after the game, I was getting the towel out of the duffel bag, and I opened it up, and a pair of my sister's panties fell out on the floor in the men's locker room. I don't think anybody saw it. I picked them up really quick.
You're quick to,
but
sure, they're yours.
No, yeah, you know.
Honestly, they're someone else's.
Yeah, you know how that sticks to the everything, and they were.
I've done that with the kids' socks or something.
Yeah. I never forget that. That I opened my towel up, and a pair of girls' panties fell out on the floor there. So, I could have been embarrassing, but like I say, I don't think anybody noticed but me.
So the panty liner might be too much information for some people, but I got a kick out of it last night. I guess some other ones too, but I probably won't share those.
Yeah, story time.
Yeah, those were the one at the national park was a good.
Yeah, I know that story. You told me that story. Yeah. Boy, we
won't go there.
And sometimes you know. Things just happen at the worst possible time.
Oh, and that was one.
And that's that story. You know, you couldn't.
Someday I'll share it.
You couldn't. Have a worse moment than that. Yeah.
When I got home,
life.
When I got home that night, Lacey was like, "What the heck happened?" But anyway, hey, you brought. So a lot of people have asked about that. Bottle of old Bucklore you were using.
Yeah, this is, I was thinking it was Dough and Heat, but this is Kronk's Buck's Joy in heat dough yarn. And I don't know how old it is, Paul. I haven't even cracked the top in decades on this, so.
Looks pretty old.
Yeah, I know it must be 20 or 30 years old anyway. Yeah, and a lot of the older outdoorsmen would recognize that name, Kronk's. There was a guy, he was a legendary outdoorsman, Oscar Kronk. Yeah, he was
check
a
it
great trapper and a hunter, and he made lures. Lived in Wiscasset, Maine.
Good old Wiscasset.
Yeah,
Lacey and I went into Wiscasset, and we were down to Booth Bay.
yeah,
Crossed right over into, and all I can think of when I hear Wiscasset, remember the movie Dead River Rough Cut?
yes, yes.
All I think about when they talk about Wiscasset.
Yeah, I've been.
So.
It's down. We used to vacation in Bath, Maine, and it's not far from Bath. So
No, we were in Edgecombe.
yeah,
We stayed in Edgecombe and we're handy to Booth Bay, and you cross the bridge there over into Wiscasset.
Yeah.
First time I think I've
So
ever been
Wiscasset was known. They had a nuclear reactor there, nuclear power plant.
there. Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, it's out of commission now, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was Maine's only nuclear power plant.
Not Yankee.
Yes.
It was Yankee.
Something Yankee or Yank. Yeah,
Why?
I'll think of it
I used to
as soon
know
as
it.
the podcast is over.
Yep.
So,
I guess we'll get into the nuts and bolts. You do any calling when you're tracking?
yeah, I do, Paul, and and I was thinking of that when you had mentioned that as being a topic. When I was a kid, I don't remember anybody even thinking about calling a deer or moose. They did. Moose, they called moose way back in the day. Probably the Native Americans called them, hundreds of years ago. But deer, I don't remember, as a kid hearing of anybody using calls for deer.
Yeah.
And now it's most hunters, they carry up to 3 calls, They have the buck grunt, the tube, buck tube there. And they have a tipper can for a doe bleat, and rattling antlers. So, like I say, a lot of people they carry 3 different ways of calling deer.
Yeah. Because you see more trackers getting into calling and stuff, and I don't know. I probably don't do it as much as I should. I definitely don't like cold call or like just blind call.
Right.
Like you grew up seeing, like, you remember watching like Real Tree Outdoors and all those, like, I guess maybe because I'm always a skeptic.
Yeah.
But they would do their little calling sequence. Then the camera cuts. Then there's a big buck coming in.
Right.
And they shoot the buck.
Yeah.
And you have this idea that, well, they just called in that buck.
Yeah. Look pretty easy in the movies, didn't it?
Yeah. And then at the end of the video, obviously their sponsor was one of the makers of the call.
Yeah.
And obviously there's probably a lot of time in between calling and that buck coming in. Now, I'm sure sometimes they did call in a buck, but I think a lot of those times it was just, they did a calling sequence, and then whenever they had footage of the shooting the buck, they put them together like it was, but I think, and
you do carry it. I carry 2, Paul. Actually 3. I do carry, instead of the actual antlers, I carry a rattle bag with hardwood dowels in it. Which I don't use very often. The grunt call and the tipper can there I use quite a bit.
I carry, and it's called the extinguisher.
Mm-hmm.
So it has like an adjustable slide on it, right on the outside, that I can adjust from like buck grunt to doe to fawn bleat and stuff like that. But I don't cold call at all. Like, I don't just randomly call.
Well,
because usually I'm tracking.
Well, the downside of that is you're giving yourself away.
And and anytime that I call, my whole demeanor changes. It's almost like it makes me a little bit anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost like I'm saying, hey, here I am, I'm over here.
Right.
You're kind of announcing where you're at.
Right.
And it kind of changes, you worry about a deer playing the wind.
Right.
Hearing you, and then, because they'll circle around and get downwind to see if they know something's there. And then just something happens to my psyche. Like, I'm just kind of, I get like hyper aware.
Right.
Almost uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I don't really.
Yeah.
just randomly call.
Yeah.
I guess unless I was going to sit someplace.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't.
Even then, like I say, the downside of that, if you're sitting and watching an area, you've given yourself up. I mean, they know there's something there, and they're looking. You know,
it changes the game a little bit. It
Right.
changes the dynamics between you and the deer.
It does.
Because they will play the wind.
Yeah, they will.
They will circle around to try to get downwind.
Because I know that I've called a few in, and you were with me one time. That I actually called the deer in, but they busted me before I saw them.
You talking about the time you were rattling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were sitting
Came
in
in behind us.
and he came in behind us there.
So you'd already shot a deer that year.
Yeah, in the same spot. In fact, I think I shot the deer I got that year, Paul, I may have been 2012, and I could look it up in the journal, but that was exactly where I'd shot a deer in that cut. And I had a trail cam up just about 100 yards away on a scrape, and I must have had 7 or 8 different deer on it.
Yeah, that was a good year.
And that was the year, Paul, you come home from college, and we checked the trail camera.
That was a big buck.
That was the same day, I
smokes.
think.
Yeah.
I think it was that morning we checked the trail camera, and that huge buck had walked by.
Yeah.
And we walked down in the cut, and you had heard some deer go, and we set up anyway in the cut. We had chairs and stuff. We set up in the cut, and I did some rattling and stuff, and we were watching. And as I remember, it was foggy, and
you had to go pee.
Had to get rid of some coffee. And when I stood up and turned around, there was a little buck standing there watching us, which I'm sure was coming out to that call.
Coming behind us. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Bucks, they're crafty.
They are.
Because they're, one thing that and this is a little bit off topic, but is when I think it's more often than not, it's areas that they don't feel comfortable, right? So coming to a road or something like that, you'll see a defined deer trail. And when I was younger, I would get into some of these remote areas. It was on an old road. And if we didn't have snow or whatever, you'd see, man, there's a lot of deer using this trail. Maybe I'll hang out one morning here and just kind of watch it. And I can remember, and it would happen all the time. You start realizing that you're getting a lot of does and fawns coming out on that trail. The bucks won't come out on that trail.
Yeah.
They'll come out further.
Yeah.
So I can remember I was set up on one, thought I was in the perfect spot. And I think I had 2 or 3 bucks that day. Like, you ever sit there and feel like you're being watched?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm watching this trail, and I think I'd seen a doe and 2 fawns come out, and then like another doe. Then you just kind of feel like you're being watched. And I look over to my left, and behind me, there's a buck standing there looking at me.
Yeah.
And he was coming out down the road from that.
Right.
So it was not
Yeah.
using that. And I'm thinking, boys,
Yeah.
they avoid those. Even though there was a lot of deer sign on it, he wasn't coming out right there.
No.
He was going to come out someplace different.
Yeah.
And he busted me.
Yeah.
And so that was, they're crafty.
Yeah.
So one, it gives you up a little bit.
It does. It does. They're coming in looking for something, and they have a unique ability to know exactly where that sound is coming from.
Yeah.
So, and another time that I had tried it, Paul, I was alone, and I sat down, and I was calling, and I think I was just using, can't remember if I was doing a little rattling and grunt tube or just a grunt tube, but anyway, after about 15 minutes, just out of sight in the woods, a deer started blowing, and I'd been there for 15 or 20 minutes, so I'm assuming that deer had come in, and then caught wind of me and blew, and that was the end of that. I never saw the deer, but he was right there.
Yeah. So I guess my personal, and a lot of it has to do with my personality. Obviously, the method that I hunt and how I go about it. I've always liked the element of surprise.
Yeah.
A lot of that's probably just me, because you can't be totally quiet in the woods.
Right.
But I like to go right along at like pretty efficiently, as quiet as I can be, and as efficient as possible, but usually pretty quick. Because a lot of times a buck will hear you, he'll hang around.
Oh yeah.
There's like this sweet
everything
spot.
that walks in the woods makes a noise.
There's like this sweet spot where if you take too long,
Yeah.
he's had too much time to think about it and he's gone.
Yep.
But you there's this moment of like, I
Yeah.
hear something,
Indecision.
and then you see him.
Yeah.
There's your opportunity.
Yeah.
And I like those
Yeah.
chances. I think for me, the best time that I find myself calling, and it's usually because it's like I got nothing left.
Yeah.
Like this is kind of a last ditch effort. But if the deer knows you're there,
Yeah.
like I think back of that buck that we were tracking, was it 2 years ago, where we could hear him breathing,
Yeah.
right? He was just on the other side of some fir trees. The gig was up. He knew we were there. He was with a doe,
Yeah.
just on the other side of those. And
Yeah.
you gave a couple grunts just in the, hey,
Yeah.
if he's curious,
Yeah.
maybe we can get him to step out into a spot
Yeah.
where we can see him. And you did that a few years back, muzzleloader.
I did, and I was just gonna touch on that, Paul. So that was one of the few times that it actually worked. I was tracking a small buck, and he was alone, but he had gone into a patch of woods where I'd gone in there 2 or 3 times that fall, and there was a doe and a lamb hanging out in there, and you could see on the road over the season bucks going in and out of there. Well, sure enough, he walked. I crossed that road tracking him. He went right down in there, and I knew where he was going. He get down in there, and he come into the doe and the fawn, and there was tracks everywhere. And then I heard him take off, and they were in a regen, like a Christmas tree farm, thick. You couldn't see anything, and I was on the outside of it in some hardwoods, and I could hear him running. And it was probably the doe and the fawn, and the buck didn't run. And so I stood there, and I blew my grunt call, and I stood there, and I can't remember how long it took. It was just a few. It wasn't long. I didn't move. I was going to be patient. There was no sense in hurrying because, like I say, I had scared the deer, and nothing to lose. So I stood there probably for 4 or 5 minutes, and I didn't hear him, but he stepped right out, right in front of me.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me. And I mean, he was close. He was,
that was game over.
That was game over.
Yeah.
But that's the one time and I knew that he heard me. He heard me blow that grunt call. He was just a small buck, and he came right out.
That's the scenario that I usually, that's when I'm grabbing.
Yeah.
Because like, let's say if I'm going, like I hate Winter Beach. God, I always find myself in Winter Beach, and say you jump something up and you're in a spot that it's like, I'm not going to get a shot at it in there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get close.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and well, maybe we can get them to, cause they can be curious.
Oh yeah.
You think of a lot of times you're tracking a buck and you jump them up.
Yeah.
And they're not quite certain what was behind them.
Right.
They go a couple 100 yards and they stand there.
Yeah.
And if you're not right on them, I mean, sometimes they'll walk right back.
Yeah.
To see, like, nothing's following me. What's going on?
Yeah.
And I mean, that almost happens like when you first jump a buck, you can almost guarantee.
Yeah.
He's going to stop. And if he's not sure,
100%.
he's going to stop.
Yeah.
And hang out there and see what, and you're hoping you can.
Yeah, we talk about that right after you jump them, Paul. That first time, that second chance is a decent chance.
Yeah.
That you'll catch them again. But after that, it's
usually
after you jump them the second time,
they know.
Yeah,
like that buck. There was one 3 years ago. I jumped him up, not hard, and you could just tell he just kind of took a couple bounds. He did the usual, kind of went down across the brook and get into some moose, and then. He get into some jack firs, and you would think it was the one that jumped in the lake.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you would think going up into that, you're like, I'll never see him in here. And he waited just on the other side of a fir tree in this little opening. But once
Yeah.
once we made eye contact,
Yeah.
that was a different game.
Yeah.
He was,
And then you
out
were
of
in,
dodge.
as Lanny said, you were in for a long chase.
It was.
It was a long day.
Then he bailed in the lake.
Yeah.
He never stopped. It was
Yeah.
a straight line. He knew right where he was going.
Yeah.
And there was no turning back.
One of the big disadvantages of calling up here is, number one, you got to have something to call to. There got to be something on the other end that's listening.
It's got to be within earshot.
With the low deer densities that we have in northern Maine where we hunt, that's a rare occasion when you sit down and call and you're within hearing range of a buck.
That's a good point, because the places where that calling works really well, because you got to remember, like, this deer are very vocal, and it's easy to kind of like oversimplify it to the various types of calls that they make. But we're dealing with a complex system. There's a lot of things that come into play. But the sex ratio of the herd,
Right.
is huge. If there's very few bucks to does,
Right.
then I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as effective. Like, I remember years
Right.
ago,
If there's a lot of competition.
there's a lot of bucks. Because if you look, like, tracking deer, we've had a couple hard winters, and you're tracking a buck, boys, they get on a mission.
Yeah.
And when they're head down and they're going someplace, I mean, you can practically stand there and holler at them.
Yeah.
And if you've ever observed a buck crossing a road, say when he's like on one, on a mission, they don't even look. I mean, they don't look up.
Yeah.
They are just like,
Right.
I got a place that I'm going.
Yeah.
And everything else,
Yeah.
it's like they got the blinders on. But when there's a lot of bucks, I can remember Ontario, some guys I knew personally, they're like, this was back in the day, probably like just before the Benoit started going up there. They would talk about like calling up in Ontario, and you just have like bucks coming out of the bushes everywhere. Like, it was very odd to them, because they're like, man, it was a crazy phenomenon. Yeah. And I think that just boils down to what the sex ratio was.
Yeah. That and just the deer density itself, a lot of your when you stop and call, you're probably going to be within range of the hearing of a deer. So, I mean, it makes a big difference. And yourself, Paul, we could stop 10 places in a day and call, and we may never in those 10 places be within hearing range of a deer. So
no, they can be
that
pockets of deer here one day, gone the next.
Yeah, that makes calling tough up here. But I still I do it. I mean, I with like I say, of all the years I've hunted, I can only think of maybe one for sure, maybe two. That the one that we were talking about that I shot, where you and I went in and called in 2012, I had been rattling in a cut, and then I get up and I walked a little ways, and that deer was standing there in the that I shot. That's the 175-pound yearling that I shot.
Yeah.
I had been rattling just before I shot that. But I get impatient, and I grab my knapsack and headed out, and he was standing so I may well have called him out of the woods into that cut. I shot him in the cut there, and I had been rattling a little time before that. So
yeah, I don't do any rattling.
Not so much. I don't like to carry. I'm not going to carry antlers around the woods. It's but I do. If I can make it a little more convenient with a rattle bag, I do that. Yeah. But I didn't use it. I don't use it much. So.
The grunt call that I use now, I like it.
Yeah.
The extinguisher, like I said, I don't use it a whole lot, but
yeah,
it doesn't freeze. Mine
does.
Does it?
Yeah. You blow it on a cold day after, You blow it a half dozen, 20 times or whatever, and it stops.
Yeah.
Moisture gets in there and it freezes up. So
Or it says it's freeze resistant. I haven't had it freeze.
yeah,
But,
I've had mine freeze.
I have filled them full of snow, and they don't work when they're full of snow.
No.
That one that I was with Keith, he took off, and I was seeing if I could stop him, because and maybe it did stop him. I was down in the woods, but because the bucket stopped in the skid trail and looked over at Keith. But I can remember picking up that grunt call, going to give it a couple of blows, and it just let like a awful squeak.
Yeah.
And I looked down, and it was just packed full of
snow.
We'd been through we had snow that night. We'd been through some tight spruces, and you're just covered in snow. And it had come, usually I'll keep it down in my jacket, but it had come out, and that was right packed full of snow.
Yeah.
So they don't work when they're full of snow. But heck, when you want to stop a deer, just holler at it.
Absolutely, whistle or holler.
I remember Zach.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. And I remember Kevin saying, geez, I would never thought to do that.
Yeah.
There's a little buck that he shot, and it took off. And I think he was trying to make a grunt with his, like, he was letting out like a meh.
Yeah.
And it wasn't paying any attention to him. And then all of a sudden he just goes, hey. And that thing froze right up and looked at him.
Yeah.
And he shot it.
Yeah. I've hollered at him when they didn't know I was there to get them to stop.
Yeah.
They may have been walking or whatever, going across the road. And yeah, I've done that a few times where you needed to, getting across the road was only going to be a few seconds. So I get right out of the truck hollering.
Yeah.
And
they go fast.
Yeah. And they'll stop right up and look in your direction and stuff. And seldom do they just after that just take off. They always give you that period of time where they're assessing and stuff, which is usually plenty of time to get an aim and shoot at them. So, yeah. Yeah,
those are the scenarios I like. When you catch them and they're like, there's that little bit of surprise.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck is that?
I would be, we're talking about calling, Paul. I would be curious to know, and I know it's a really high percentage of people that do actually carry calls now.
It seems like, especially, so tracking, it was
I
something
bet it's
that no one
darn
ever
close
did.
to 100%.
And it seems like everybody.
Yeah.
You get a lot of guys that try to basically imitate, like sounding like a deer going through the woods.
Yeah,
I'm not going to put that sort of emphasis on it because I want to track a deer and
some of the ones that aren't carrying calls, they probably have a pretty good mouth call.
Yeah.
They probably can do a pretty good deer call with their mouth. But I'll bet you it's pretty close to 100% of the people out there have a grunt tube hanging around their neck or a tipper can in their pocket. And there's...
Because even when I was a kid, no one carried a...
No, when I was
They
young,
had them, but they never even...
Yeah.
You know,
I didn't hear much. And there again, growing up, I didn't hang around a lot of really serious deer hunters. I went deer hunting, but the people I went deer hunting with weren't serious deer hunters and stuff. And
well, the guys you went to deer camp with were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you talking before?
I don't even know if they produced them in the 80s, Paul, and stuff.
They must have.
They might have. I don't remember any grunt calls or whatever, and they may have, but they weren't popular.
Yeah.
Like they are today. So, yeah.
Huh.
It's just like rattling too, Paul. I think that it seemed to me that was really big years ago, and in Texas and places like that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I don't want to say that was the birthplace of rattling deer, but it was bigger down there. And Maine was late to the game in rattling. So,
yeah, like I'm just not going to carry that stuff around. And
like
I said, it does something to my demeanor when I start like presenting sound.
Right.
It just makes me feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
So I said, it makes me kind of like, I don't know, like hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
Like the minute I do it, I'm thinking, oh man, there's probably something right in earshot, like just waiting for me.
Yeah.
And I've kind of given up the ghost. But
yeah.
if I were to sit, I would be a lot more relaxed about it.
Yeah.
But when I'm on my feet,
Yeah.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
So, but we do carry them.
Yeah. I carry, like I say, I carry two with, and sometimes I carry the rattleback, but I always carry, and this year was the first year I've had a tipper can, the doe bleat.
Yeah, you would just be walking around and I'd hear it go off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Here comes Dad.
Yeah.
Maybe you're onto something.
Well, you can overuse stuff too. So.
You can. Less is more.
Yeah.
With that, I really am a firm believer.
Yeah.
When it comes to calling and that stuff, that less is more.
You can overuse it and stuff. And another thing that you know, if you were somebody that you went out and the first time you used one and shot a deer, man, you would be using it all, the rest of your career, hunting career. You'd be using it left and right. So
and anytime it works, you kind of get it can, because it's hard to keep a very objective mindset about it. Because when you sit down, if you were to actually document all the times that you called with no results,
right,
as compared to calling and getting results, if you had those data points, you'd be like, why do I even waste my time?
Yeah.
But the times that you are successful are such a strong signal to people.
That's true.
That
and I've seen a lot of videos where people have used them, with success and stuff. And boy, you'd have a hard time after that one time. You'd have a hard time convincing them not to use it. So.
It's like that with hunting spots.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you're successful in a spot, and then it becomes very hard to pull yourself away from it because you've got a history with those. Yeah, I was successful there.
That'll always be in your mind.
And you are no longer objectively analyzing the scenario. You're going, I'm not seeing any sign, but I've been here before and I've shot deer. There's got to be. Yeah. And maybe there isn't anymore, but it's easy to get.
I can think of a few situations like the cut that I shot my deer in this year and I shot it in 2021. You can bet that,
that's probably the first place
we got a lot of
next
confidence in that cut now. When you step in that cut, you're really looking around. And it makes you more successful because you there was deer there, and you pick apart the woods a lot better when you have that confidence.
Plus your mindset's like, oh, next year I'm going to go out there and I'm just
going to be right there
and shoot one. Yeah, piece of cake.
Yeah,
that's the way it works.
Well, and then you go there more often, expecting that. So then you do become successful, and it just builds on itself.
Yeah,
the snowball gets bigger. So,
yeah. That stuff's always, and like I said, back, you've seen this stuff bled into kind of the Northeast now. Yeah, because it was like the box blind hunters, the real tree buckmasters, all those. That was, and that's basically all we had for hunting videos to watch. Yeah, was what those guys were doing in those areas, which is really different than the way we hunt.
Yeah, it is.
There's similarities, but there's definitely some real big differences. On how you approach. Yeah.
Like I say, deer densities in themselves and that's why track and snow was always so important in Maine because the deer densities were so low, and so with snow, you knew exactly where that deer was. Yeah.
And all the guys that live here and hunt,
he's at the end of the track.
You talk to them, and when they're deer hunting and there's no snow, they are not. I don't want to say they're not optimistic, but they're just like, man. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going out there, but I feel like I'm basically in no man's land.
And I have a long history of that because I have 57 or 8 years of deer hunting, and most of my deer were shot the end of Thanksgiving week, and this is before muzzle loading, when the weather was cool and you had snow on the ground. That's just the way it was. We were never very successful early in the season. We went out, and we enjoyed it and stuff, but it turned into more of a scouting mission than, and our expectations were low. You know, we didn't even, and if we got one, it was a big bonus, you know, but seldom did we get one.
It was a lot more luck.
Yeah.
If you got one.
Yeah. Most of our deer were late in the season. Actually, the end of Thanksgiving week from Thursday until Saturday, most of the deer we killed were shot then.
It's funny. I had a guy send me an email the other day. He's from Georgia. And so it's funny how snow even affects people that have never hunted on snow in deer hunting. And they had a snow, which is rarity in Georgia.
Yeah, they're getting a storm here in, I think, a few days down there, a snowstorm in northern Florida and Georgia.
He's like, it was like I was living a dream.
Yeah.
It's like he was so excited about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, there's something about snow
in
deer hunting that just really.
Yeah. Even to the people that we hunted with, Paul, that like Dale and stuff, who
he would
stand hunting. You know, you just saw the woods so much better, and it was just your optimism went way up.
And, it does something to the mind.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Yeah, and it was that way, Paul, back in I'm sure my grandfather's time, but I know in my father's time they all hunted. You know, a lot harder when the snow was on the ground. You know, hunter participation went way up, you know, and the kill went way up. And it still does, you know.
Oh, God, yeah. When you see
when we have a snowy fall, the deer kill is expected to go up.
The first, every year, the first snowfall that sticks around for a day or two at least, where you've got a little bit of time to hunt on it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the success rate goes up.
Yeah.
You just start seeing all kinds of pictures and stuff.
Always have up here. And that's the way it is.
Yeah. It's crazy how I guess linked to the snow we are up here. So, all right. Well, we did some coyote hunting the other day.
Yeah, we gave it, now I'm going to speak for myself, and I have very little experience in coyote hunting. I'm by no means proficient or an expert at it or whatever. So I've yet to see one. I've only gone a couple times in my life with you.
We were into them.
We were, yeah. That was exciting in itself. The first place we stopped, Paul, and that was we had a pretty good plan because we had always seen a lot of coyote tracks there deer hunting, and
they spend a lot of time there
and heard them and howling and stuff. So we went right there, and 5 minutes after we were out of the vehicle, they were howling all around us there.
The problem is, and I knew that going into it, was like, I know there's going to be coyotes there.
Yeah.
But getting in a position where you can see one to shoot it, it's going to be hard. Because there's not a lot of places in the woods you can see hundreds of yards, right?
They're definitely limited in visibility to,
You're hoping to get one to come out onto this old road and run out or kind of run through the woods. And so it was going to be tough. But they were howling all around us there. Close too at one point. Yeah,
you did your coyote howl there on your call, and boy, they lit right up.
They did.
Right after you blew that, they lit right up, and they weren't far.
Nope.
But getting them to, again, they know that right where that is, and getting them to step out
because they will try to use the wind.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of guys will set up.
And they may have.
A lot of guys will set up in some place where it's more of a crosswind.
Yeah, so
they can see a spot where, if let's say they're sitting up in a crosswind, and they can catch a coyote coming out downwind of them. Right, they can see downwind.
Yeah,
and get a chance at them that way. Because when you start making noise, they're coming in with a focus on.
Yeah, there again, they know,
they're not.
They know that something's there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, your best bet up here is if you have a bait.
Yeah, most people bait up here, and they're successful at it.
Yeah, your best way is because calling up here is so hard. You see them do it out west, but they've got. I mean, they can see 1,000 yards.
Right. They get open terrain.
They get out on a knob someplace, and you can see.
Yeah.
Forever. So something comes in
Yeah.
or he's trying to circle around, you know right away. And
Yeah.
yeah, like we were talking, it's usually like first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Nothing shows up in 20 minutes. You're on to your next stop. But yeah, there was plenty of coyotes there.
Yeah.
We went back and walked down in there too.
Yeah. Coyote tracks all through the
Hair
woods. And,
everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
It was coyote hair. It wasn't.
yeah, you're right. It was
know.
it was blonde.
I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it had anything to do with mating season. It seems to me, I read that mating season for coyotes is January through March or
Okay.
something, January to March. And I'm wondering if there was some competition, maybe some fighting, because obviously one of those coyotes get tore up.
Oh, there was hair everywhere.
There was hair everywhere. And,
Great
and
big-
originally I thought it
big
was
tufts
deer
of
hair,
hair.
but it wasn't. It was coyote hair that it was blonde and with a few dark strands mixed in. And yeah, so somebody was taking a beating there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it had anything to do with mating or
Yeah,
or
they had that
anything
area
like that.
Tore up.
Yeah.
Someone had some dogs or something went through there. Man, they some
Yeah.
hounds.
Yeah. And
Right.
it was
Probably do some damage.
because it had snowed that night and that hair was all fresh. It had only had that snow. It was snowing while we were there on it. So, I mean, it happened that day.
It was a beautiful day too. It was nice to get out.
Yeah.
Another sunny day, no wind.
Yeah.
You can get anywheres in the woods.
Yeah.
There's what, 6 inches of snow?
5-6 inches of snow on the ground.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't see a lot of deer tracks. Saw a few.
Yeah. We
Here
did
and
see
there.
some in the usual spots where you'd expect to see them, you know, on some actually migration type of trails that,
Which is odd for them to be there this time of year.
right.
Because
But
typically it'd be in the yards.
with
but
6 inches of snow, they can be anywhere they want.
go
So,
wherever they want.
and I think we got another, they were saying, I think 4 to 6 tonight, Paul, into tomorrow.
All right.
So we got some more snow coming, and which will be good for the snowmobilers. But yeah, still not enough to really
No.
bother the deer.
No, and we're into, well, January is almost over.
Yeah,
So we'll have basically 2 more months left. Of
right. February,
winter.
March for winter.
Things will start warming up and
Yeah,
deer herd should be good.
should be, Paul.
Jeez, I can't imagine.
There again, we talked about this last year, and now this year it bodes well. And yeah, I'll be interested to see. I don't think the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife has put out the information on deer shot in townships up here, but that'll be interesting to see.
Usually, I think the last report, typical reports come out end of February or March.
Yeah.
I think is usually
Yeah,
what I see.
I do know, like we were talking, that they do have like Aroostook County, or excuse me, Zone 3 was 303 the last I had looked.
Yeah, I haven't
So
looked in a
that
while.
would be a final figure. Deer season's been over for over a month up here.
Yeah.
So
But they'll release a final report.
yeah,
And I think I always recall it being like dated the end of February or beginning of March when that comes out.
yeah. And the statewide was around 42,000,
Yeah, it was good.
which is really good.
Yeah, it is.
So
Some states don't get that because I'll get some people comment that they're like, "Oh man, my state shot like 100 and something thousand." Or
yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah, I can
all kinda
remember
relative.
years, Paul, that below 20, 18,000 or
Yeah.
whatever. So, you know, for a total kill. So 42 is
more than double."
more than double.
Yeah,
It's that's a good number.
and I wonder. I'll have to look this up. I wonder how that is in comparison to license sales. So
Yeah.
I wonder if back then when there was, because I think hunter participation's going down.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked at the numbers exactly, but just from what I feel from talking to people, that there's less people that hunt now than there used to.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see what, and I'm sure that number's out there as far as
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen them list.
how many deer shot per.
Yeah, and how many big game? What they do is, and of course, you know, just because you have a license doesn't mean you went deer hunting.
No.
But
You're still part of the pool.
they do have that number's fairly easy to find. How many big game licenses
I'll look it up.
they sell?
I like numbers and stuff like that.
Which might be a little misleading because now, Paul, so many young kids before they hunt are getting big game like a lifetime license.
Yeah.
And I've got mine.
Yeah.
You know, so how do you factor that in or whatever?
Yeah, my kids are the same way. They've got
and I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of kids in the state of Maine that already have a big game license, have a lifetime license, and they're not even close to using it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
Yeah.
So anything else?
No.
I think we've gone about 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No.
Well, good. Thanks for bringing the bottle of
like I say, that
over.
Some of the old timers, they'll know Oscar Cronk. You know, he was a well-known outdoorsman. Oscar Cronk was. He wrote, and he was a well-known trapper, hunter, and lore maker. He just sold this business. I was reading up on it a little bit there. He sold it in 2021. He was 91 years old.
Holy smokes.
So I'm assuming Oscar is still alive. He'd be 95.
Wow.
And the business is still running, I guess. So
nice.
Yeah, but that was bought. I'm gonna say
that was bought when he was 31.
Yeah, I'm thinking in the 90s maybe.
Okay.
I bought that. I don't think that's the first bottle I ever bought, but yeah.
All right, cool.
So,
all right, I guess we'll do it again next week.
Yes.
Same time, same place.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I guess until next time, get outside.
It's good for the soul.
See ya.